Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me for another Alfred Hitchcock Presents review. Today I will be talking about Season 4, Episode 36, Invitation to an Accident, starring Gary Merrill and Joanna Moore. And Invitation to an Accident is the last episode of Season 4, another long season of Alfred Hitchcock Presents. It amazes me how many episodes were in these old seasons of television back in the day. But with that being said, what did I think of the last episode of season 4? I thought it was just okay. It's decent. So we start with Alfred Hitchcock in kind of an amusing scene, talking about some disturbing so-called children's stories. It was a decent way to start the episode, but nothing too great. Kind of like this whole episode, in my opinion. So we start at a party, and we meet a lady named Virgilia, and we also meet her husband Joseph, who seems kind of distraught. Seems like he's drinking, kind of upset. The reason for this is because his wife Virgilia seems to be hanging out more with some of her old friends than she is with him. But apparently he doesn't know who she's talking to outside, which I admittedly didn't realize until the end of the episode. But I'll talk more about that when we get there. We're also introduced to this friend of hers named Albert, who comes outside and kind of warns her, your husband seems to be drinking, he seems to be distraught, maybe you should go back inside. So that's kind of the setup for our episode. So Virgilia and Joseph are driving home and they're chatting, and Joseph says, I don't really want you to lose touch with your old friends. Why don't you invite one of them over? So this leads Virgilia to inviting this friend Albert over, the man we met in the first scene. And they chat and they eat dinner. Everything seems to be going okay until Virgilia and Albert decide to take a walk outside. So they talk about this ex named Cam, who she's been hanging out with some. She complains about her husband. She doesn't really seem that happy. And Albert seems very sympathetic. They also go into like this, I don't know if it's a shed or a garage-like area, whatever you want to call it. And Albert notices that there's this like can of arsenic out there. And he tells Virgilia, you should be happy because I suspect that your husband is dangerous. And, just don't mess with him too much. So they're ready to go back inside. Everything seems okay. But when Virgilia opens the door, this like loose scaffold falls on her. This scaffold had been mentioned earlier in the episode. And that's kind of the halfway point of our episode. So when we come back, Virgilia does seem to be okay. But it turns out that what happened is the rope that was holding the scaffold up breaks. Joseph looks at it and says it was probably like the wind or the force or something that broke it. But it does seem like kind of a strange bit of logic. So Albert's not convinced of this. You could tell he suspects that maybe Joseph had something to do with this since he wasn't with them when they went on the walk. He was inside finishing his drink. So this leads Albert to pay another visit to Virgilia, but she's not around, so he goes kind of investigating on his own. He goes back to this shed-like area and finds that the can of arsenic is missing. He also hears that Joseph's ill, and it seems like he kind of suspects maybe he was going to try and poison his wife, but he messed up and took it himself somehow or something, which is also kind of strange, but also relevant to the end of the episode. Now, at this point, I am kind of interested in this episode, but I also just kind of think it's just moving along. The characters aren't really all that interesting, but the story's okay. So at this point, Albert goes to see this elderly lady who was at the beginning of the episode, but I'm not really sure what the relation is. I don't think they say, but anyway, he basically says he thinks that Joseph will probably try and kill his wife yet again, and he has to do something to protect her. So it seems like he's going to confront Joseph about this. He goes to pay him and Virgilia another visit. And it turns out that kind of through Virgilia's maybe idea that Joseph invents Albert hunting. They don't like the idea, so they decide to go fishing instead. So then we go to the last scene of the episode, and the two men are on this trip, and they're chatting. And eventually the conversation gets around to Albert bringing up murder, and he kind of hints that he knows what Joseph is up to. And Joseph kind of plays along with it and says he knows of a very similar situation that's gone on at some point, and we know now that they mean about the present, basically. This scene was okay. I was still interested in what the twist was going to be. So it turns out what happened is that when the scaffold fell, Joseph was actually trying to kill Albert because he thought he would open the door instead of killing his wife, because he felt like Albert was the one that was maybe seeing her, having an affair with her, whatever. But it turns out that it was this guy Cam instead. So I guess Joseph didn't know what was going on at the beginning of the episode. So basically, how this crazy episode ends is that Joseph has drugged or poisoned, basically, Albert's coffee, but it turns out that he'll be okay because he built up a tolerance for the poison or arsenic or whatever, and that's why he was taking it earlier in the episode. If all of this sounds kind of strange, it was. It's almost kind of like a double twist, which I thought worked okay. My big issue with this episode is it just kind of plods along. I didn't think that any of the characters were that interesting. The acting is solid, but I don't think it's spectacular. I think there's been better acted episodes of Alfred Hitchcock Presents. And ultimately, I just didn't really care that much about these characters. But I was interested in the mystery most of the way through, although I did think this was a bit of a slow episode as well. Overall, I just think Invitation to an Accident is average, but I could see some liking it more than me. But I'm going to give it a 2.5 out of 5. So, just an okay way to end Season 4. As always, thanks for watching.